Welcome to the second installment of the Music Alumni Showcase series. This is part of the Trinity Virtual Long Walk series, and as we're continuing to do, we're going to plan to hold more events on the first Thursday in December at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Tonight's event will be archived, and you can access it by going to the Austin Arts Center Facebook page to find links, and there will also be a link to that posted in the chat as well. If you're interested in possibly participating in a future event, or if you want to reach us directly, you can send us an email to music-alumni@trincol.edu. That's TRINCOLL.edu. I'm Eric Galm. I'm the chair of the music department here at Trinity, and I'd like to give a big thanks to Alex Fishbein, Heller Mira, Jason Jones, and the Trinity Department of Alumni Relations, and a special thank you to alum Nicole Muda-Graves. Nicole is originally from Boxford, Mass., and she's a singer-songwriter and music agent based in Chicago. While at Trinity, she studied ethnomusicology with a focus in Trinidadian music after spending a semester on the island. She was also a member of the Trinity College Quirks, the Samba Ensemble, and the Steel Pan Ensemble. Upon graduating, Nicole moved to New York and began a career as an agent, opening Arc Artists, a boutique music booking agency with two colleagues in 2016. She moved to Chicago in 2018 and works directly with Arc Artists Chicago-based artists. In addition to her work as an agent, Nicole has freelanced as an assistant to artist Sunny Jane, as well as on-site in production and ticketing for events including the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, Pitchfork Music Festival, and Golden Voice Music Festivals, which produces Coachella, Stagecoach, and Panorama. Nicole enjoys writing and performing music in Chicago and looks forward to returning to local venues when the city can safely reopen. So I'm thrilled to introduce four recent alums from Trinity who are pursuing careers and activities in the arts. And we'll begin with some video presentations and introductions to each individual or group. And then following the presentations of people's works, we will then have a conversation to learn about their experiences since graduating from Trinity. I invite you to submit questions which can be written in the chat section on Zoom. So kicking us off today, we're going to have a piece by Austin Tewksbury, who graduated in 2013, and Marc Alexis, who graduated in 2014. Austin is a Hartford-based guitarist, singer, and songwriter, and member of the band Allen's Brew. Austin's diverse musical experience includes freelance choral work in churches, playing lead roles in community musical theater productions, and most recently organizing the West End Harvest Jam, a fully online showcase of musicians in and around Hartford's West End. Marc is a New York native, singer-songwriter, sax, piano, drums, and bass player. Marc's collegiate experience includes jazz ensemble, steel drums, a cappella, Shonda step team, elemental dance crew, which is hip-hop, performing in musicals, and participating in the Inner Arts program. Since Trinity, he has worked various jobs in support of his music career, including dog walking, organizing for housing reform, and taking care of mentally disabled people. Marc hopes to channel his life experiences into music that inspires as well as entertains. And so we are going to start with a piece from Marc and Austin.
Welcome to the West End Harvest Gym. We are Allen's Brew. We hope you enjoy. I know you can nothing to fight with. Your silence is the most violent. Tell me how to feel about you now. Tell me how to feel about you now. Oh,
All right. And next up, we have John Moran, who graduated in 2015. John is a professional producer, engineer, and musician currently located in Los Angeles. After graduating from Trinity, he spent 2 years performing live in New York City, both in original and cover bands. With his band, Jack and Honey, he released the funk single Thrill and opened for Eric Clapton and Tedeschi Trucks Band. He performed alongside Grammy Award-winning singers and songwriters, co-wrote music with the Light, and sold out popular nightclubs in New York City. Afterwards, he located to the West Coast to be closer to home and the lush studio environment in Los Angeles. He is a first-call producer and engineer for several Los Angeles bands and is currently earning his master's degree in music production from the Berklee College of Music. And here's his selection, Don't Take My Mind.
She took all my clothes and she wore them in the pouring rain. My best hoodie came back with a hole and a purple stain. I'm new to this feeling, I don't mind the stealing. You can take all my clothes, but baby, please don't take my mind. I found all my cigarettes burned on the fire escape from a night of drunk lullabies by the bars over Avenue A. She took my spare keys then. She could take everything. I made her miss it, darling. Please don't take my mind. Please don't take my mind. Please don't take my mind. I use it all the time. Love games will cross my wires. My face pressed to the fire. So please don't take my mind. I need you in my life. Don't use me like you might. Never even decide if you want me, baby. She took all my sleep, talking, staying up real late. I heard a knock on the door when I thought she had gone away. And I prayed to my ceiling when I'm on and wheeling.
All right. And next up, we have Marisa Tornello, who graduated in 2015. Marisa is a composer, vocalist, songwriter, and performance artist born and raised in New York City. Currently pursuing her master's in music for performance composition at the New School, Marisa's focus for the past 5 years has centered around creating art that addresses the stigma around mental health. Marisa interned and worked under Meredith Monk during her time at the Trinity La Mama Performing Arts Program, an experience that started her interest in composition and extended vocal technique. She had the distinct opportunity to work at Trinity La Mama as program coordinator after graduating from Trinity, and got to create and act with La Mama resident companies Pioneers Go East Theater Collective and Loco 7 Puppet Dance Theater. She performed a duration performance art piece titled Blank at the Tank during Lady Fest in 2018, which addressed settings of depression and wearing masks in a cruel world. She most recently performed as an improvised extended technique vocalist in Yoshiko Chuma's Secret Journey to Tipping Utopia. She is currently composing a series of pieces centered around anxiety in the age of COVID-19. This piece, Burst, is a retrospective into the opposing emotions of Americans during the pandemic. The piece evolves from acoustic voices and instruments into white noise, an expression of loudness in a confusing time. Singular anguish transforms into overwhelming confusion.
I'm tired. I want to fight. I really want to fight. But when I try to fight, I feel broken. And I don't know where to go to talk to. It's like everyone's falling apart, and I'm trying to grasp there's no air. I'm tired.
Okay, and we will finish with our pre-recorded session with a solo piece by Austin, and then a return of Alan's Brew featuring Marc. right. Yes, hands up. Right. Um, so I did want to ask each of you about your, if you wanted to speak about your pieces. But actually, we do have two questions that came in that actually are more specific about that. So maybe if you want to speak about these, this is a question for John. Asking if you could describe the key elements of the production process. Specifically, how did you create the gradual build with the sonics blanketing the vocals? And then for Marisa, a question came in, did the graphic notation come first, or did you compose the music and let the sounds guide the notation? Um, and then if you want to speak generally about the pieces as well.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to jump in. So that I guess as a producer, the production process is it's sort of like I mean, what people say is if you're producing a song, it's like being the director of a film. So someone sends you a script, someone sends you a song, and you're in charge of figuring out how exactly you want every single shot to look, how you want each one to sound, um, and what your cast should be. So what players you want to have on it. So in this case, I wrote a song that was very Beatlesy, very old school sounding. And initially, it just started off with acoustic guitar and vocals, and that was it. From there, I decided I wanted to flesh it out with strings, and I booked a studio that had an old school Gretsch vintage drum kit, so that we could get all of the elements as appropriate and time correct as possible. Um, from there, I arranged strings. So that can be a responsibility of a producer too, is arranging all of the music. Arranged strings, and once we got to the studio, we decided we wanted to emulate Frank Ocean's "Thinking About You." I don't know how familiar you guys are with that song, but in the intro on that song, there's this massive sounding string orchestra. And the secret behind that is they booked a day in an auditorium, huge room, and they set up 4 chairs and they only had one string player. And he sat in one chair, he played his part, stood up, moved to the next chair, played his part in the next seat, stood up, played his part in the next seat. And the result of that is that you get this really big, lush sounding reverb from all of the different strings interplaying in the room. So we decided to use that. For this one in particular, part of what made the build effective for me was frequency limiting. So from the start, you have electric guitar and vocals, and that's pretty much it. And the frequency expansion of that is fairly narrow. It's all mid-range. It's pretty much just your vocals or what you're going to hear. And as you progress through the song, you add in cello, so the frequency drops down. You add in a second string part, so the frequency extends up a little bit. And then as you hit the bridge part, where everything kind of goes crazy and the drums come in, there's a deep piano note that gets added. So as the song builds, the frequencies are actually expanding and getting broader. So when you finally hit that last chorus section, it feels like you've arrived somewhere. I learned that from Latch by Disclosure. I don't know if you guys know that song, but if you listen to the way the frequencies are balanced throughout the track, when you hit the chorus where there's that weird high-pitched vocal sample, the bass comes in for like the first time in the whole song, and it feels massive. So that was the process on that one. Yeah.
So actually, I have a follow-up on that,
Sure.
just about your listening process. Like, as you learn more about music production, do you start listening like in 3D to audio recordings?
Absolutely, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Like front to back, left to right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm studying. I'm earning my master's in production, and some of my teachers have described that as a curse. They're like, I can't unhear it. Every time I listen to a song, I'm just like paying too much attention to what's going on, like where different frequencies are, where certain instruments are. But I've found that the songs that you love tend to hold up pretty well the more you learn, the more you're like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. And that's why I love this song. It's because they did this amazing, super difficult, unusual, different thing.
Hmm. Okay. And Marisa, did you want to talk about your piece?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start off with answering that question. The score came first. I knew that I wanted to create a piece that sort of spoke to the chaos that we're experiencing in this country, and I feel like everyone has a very anxiety-induced voice, but coming together ends up getting very chaotic. So I knew that before I put anything on record, I wanted to create a structure and to see how many layers I wanted, how those layers would be, what instruments I would be using, and what would be the best mixture in terms of those instruments. And before I started recording, I knew that I wanted to use a mixture of strings, voice, and some electronics. So that was very important, getting that on paper first. And then in terms of the visual component, I wanted to experiment to see what it would sound like if you were to read a score from both sides inward. So the left was literally the left, and the right was literally the right. And they're also stereo sound panned that way. If you have stereo headphones on, you can hear voices coming from each side and then coming slowly together to the center. So there was a bit panning there that can be lost over Zoom, unfortunately, but very much literal to the score. In terms of the process of the piece, I used voice, auto, harp, mandolin, guitar, and dulcimer. And then just working with feedback with jumping wires and individual 4V speakers, and just to see how that static can relate to cacophony in the sound of a human voice. Yeah, and then working in Ableton, creating gradual static, definitely wanting to pull off the intention of discomfort, which I think is something we all can relate to in terms of the various noises coming from all angles in this day and age. And then at the end, there was sort of a symbolic gesture to what does your voice sound like after you go through that filter of noise, and it's not as clear and it's not as pure. It's altered permanently, sort of from this state that we've been through. We'll never really go back to the way we were. So I wanted to figure out a way where just my speaking alone could sort of have that eroded quality to it, to grasp that concept. But yeah, that was generally the scope of the work in terms of process.
Okay, great. And kind of picking up on that, for Austin and Marc, for your songs that you do together, do you have a collaborative songwriting process, or do you have a general way in which you work to develop pieces and arrangements?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with the start, which was COVID was around the corner, and we actually met up in New York in February this year, and kind of both realized that in spite of having quite a few years between graduation and this year for both of us, music was clearly the direction for both of us. So we talked about collaborating, we talked about visiting each other more often, writing music, and there we decided first that we would start just getting in each other's head in terms of what we're listening to. So we've made a lot of playlists, just sharing what we're listening to, what we like, what we imagine each other actually performing, which is really cool. Of course, COVID hit then, and so while we haven't been able to be together too often, between sharing voice memos, lyrics, things we've written independently, and then workshopping them, that's how we've gotten to, like, for example, the song that Marc sang, My Fault. That's a Marc original, with just a little bit of input from me and my roommate Sam on the drums. That's the gist. Marc, I don't know what else you want to add.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on. I just have to add that we also the first song that was shown was a cover that we did because our creative styles were not fully panned out, so we needed a kind of common ground to kind of work on. And so prior to shooting that video, we had one live practice 4 days before, which kind of speaks to one of the questions, what we took away from Trinity and just the ability to like really immerse ourselves in the music. And we've kind of been jamming with each other since Trinity, so it wasn't super brand new to us. Yeah, that's what I would like to add.
And actually that was going to lead into just a general question for each of you is kind of what has been your trajectory experience since graduating from college, and how have you worked to continue, developing your work in the arts while trying to keep food on the table and things like that. So how has that balance been for you?
I guess I'll start. It's just been interesting, especially with COVID really put a stop to our plans. And it took a lot of adapting. Virtual, I think that's been our saving grace, being able to use Google Docs to share documents, voice memos. But trajectory rise, it's going to be a lot of content creating. These are very soul seeking moments that are like just happening. And I have found it useful to go on walks and just kind of unplug from the news and just write down what I'm feeling. Kind of the inner process of kind of Marisa's piece. I really felt that because it's like she wrote down how I feel inside sometimes, and it's good to just journal, really, which is, well, I digress. Point being, it's a whole lot of content creating now and just really priming ourselves for when things start to roll back out in the springtime, I think, and finding virtual gigs, which would probably be more of a thing in the future.
Any other trajectories since school?
So one of my important takeaways since I graduated from Trinity, I moved to New York. I moved back to San Francisco. I'm from San Francisco, and I ended up in LA. Pretty much everywhere I've been, I've had another job. I've worked part-time somewhere else while I've been producing and working for other people, doing cover gigs, whatnot. I will say that cover gigs pay pretty well. They can be really fun, but they don't like reward you deep down. But it's one good way to keep food on the table is learn every song you possibly can. But a big takeaway for me has been to know your market, just in terms of your location. I love San Francisco. I would love nothing more than to live in San Francisco. But as far as the music scene goes, it's a lot of tech employees on their day off who, want to play an Irish pub. And aside from that, there's not a ton going on. So I ended up moving a little farther from home to be in LA and to be close to all of the studios here, which has ended up being a really good decision for my career. A lot more bands, a lot more people to work for. But as far as live performing goes, I have not found LA to be great. It's a saturated market and everyone has to drive to shows. You can't go and have a few drinks and drive home. You have to Uber like 25 miles to the gig and then Uber 25 miles back. So it's a good place for recording, but not so much live performance.
It's kind of interesting that you had to travel to get to a virtual environment,
Yeah, that's true.
Marisa or Austin, do you guys want to chime in?
I can chime in. Yeah, so the past 5 years, I've been working as an arts administrator. jumping between different genres of art. I started out working at Trinity and then I transitioned into a classical music production company, and then back to Trinity which were all wonderful experiences and really gave me a window into different communities. But I knew the whole time that I wanted to be a full-time artist. So figuring out ways to put my art into a full-time position was really challenging, especially in New York City, where there's so much going on and there's so many communities that you could be collaborating with, but those communities are so vast and so expansive that it's tough to find your niche specifically in those communities. So you sort of need to figure out ways to find subgenres within these genres. Yeah, and I actually took advice very seriously from Professor Platoff when I graduated, which was, wait, if you want to keep pursuing your degree, just give it a second, give it a breather. So I did, and now I'm 27, and similar to John, pursuing my master's in music after being in that arena and not quite knowing what resources I should have to pursue that. And really, now that I'm in grad school, I can clearly see like it has so much to do with networking. It has so much to do with communicating everyone around you. It has so much to do with events like this, where you already have a community, you already have a network where you can just talk to this expansive group of alumni. It's so much to do with that. Train La Mama, it was so substantial in my life, and having an alumni organized group on Facebook was so huge, and I saw in real time all these collaborations happening. So it's possible. We just need to make sure that we communicate. If there's any students on right now, like don't be shy to communicate with us. Like that's what this is about, and that's what's going to allow you to thrive in your trajectory as an artist after college. So I've sort of found that those are really the things you need to be looking out for, networking and just knowing the basis of what you want to go into. So for me, being an experimental contemporary classical study, there's a huge amount of grant writing that you really need to be comfortable with, and there's knowing where to look for that money, knowing where to look for commissions and grants, because the basis of that work is around those things. But yeah, it's different depending on the different fields of music that you go into. But for that, those are really the primary points to look out for.
And actually, kind of talking about the networking piece, there's been a general request in the Q&A for people to post links if you have websites or places where you want to direct people. Probably we will be listing this on our Facebook page. But if you want to enter them into the chat, just while we're chatting, feel free to direct people to any locations or sites that you want to put out there as well. Austin, I didn't want to cut you off from responding to that as well.
Yeah, when I was at Trinity, my expectation was that I would be going to med school. So that set me on a very confused path. So for maybe the next couple of years after I graduated, I was pursuing science. That I realized was not a good choice. So I ended up recovering from my bad choices, doing some part-time work, a little bit of just a small amount of gigging, open mic kind of stuff. Still by far my most lucrative gig to date has been singing in a church choir, which of course is no longer a choir due to COVID ending in-person choirs as we know them, or at least pausing them. But I've been working at a church now for a few years, just sight reading hymns and doing some other things that remarkably Trinity prepared me for, like, extremely well. The chapel singers was on point. And that speaks a little bit to the question of getting gigs. There are happy accidents. I think if you're asking about getting gigs, probably the best thing you can hear is that you know, they're not just going to happen overnight. Some night eventually they will, but if you feel anxiety and feel that you're not finding what you need to find, the kind of bothersome answer is that it's on the way if you're persistent. My sister's a music teacher, was looking in, she's a member of a Connecticut opera singers Facebook group. And this is where I learned about the audition for this church gig that I've had for a few years. Actually, additionally, a friend of hers, another music teacher, is opening a sort of a wellness center where I'll start teaching guitar lessons next week. And so, plus a few gigs, including working for Professor Galm, playing samba shows, again until COVID stopped that too. But seriously, you need to look everywhere you can think to look. The people you know are the best path to finding work. I mean, if you're a student or any musician and you're here, this is exactly what you should be doing. I am in Hartford, and so to echo what Marisa said, hit me up. I love music to death. I actually hear my roommates listening to this laughing downstairs. But that's been my trajectory. You know, I've been in Connecticut the whole time, more or less, but you know, it's tough even knowing what you want. So take your time.
So it blows me away at how quickly time can move, even in one of these sessions. But one thing I would like to hear from each of you that I really want to make a feature of these conversations is, what did you learn at Trinity? If you're speaking to either present students or future students, what did you learn at Trinity that has helped you in your life beyond college? So what have been those life lessons that, and also kind of teaming that up, is there, like, knowing what you know now, is there something different that you would have done while you were in school that you would have wanted to focus on or pursue in a different way?
Yes, definitely. I was super into music the entire time I was at Trinity, and I felt a little out of place. And that might be a sentiment that some people share, but everyone loves music, man. I mean, it takes a while to get established anywhere, and I think one of the biggest mistakes that I made at Trinity was just not embracing it, and not letting myself enjoy being in an amazing place. I think it took me until my senior year of college to really just be like, oh yes, I can do what I want to do. Like, I'm in the right spot for it. And also, you know, going back to getting gigs, I played the tap all the time. I don't know if that's still a thing, but like, I played the tap so much with my band. Like, we would bring all of our own equipment. We would play shows. Like, we would get paid. We would get free drinks. I mean, that's a great spot. If you can bring your own stuff there, like that, I would strongly recommend reaching out to the tap and seeing if they would let you do a show. But also, I mean, I studied English, so my degree is in English. I really wanted to be the best at writing lyrics that I possibly could be, but it's also helped me a lot in sessions in ways that I didn't really anticipate. One of the main criticisms that you give any musician when they're playing a session, especially vocalists, is just, I don't believe you. Whatever you're singing, like, I don't believe you. I don't believe this is sincere. The feeling that you are trying to convey is not coming across in a convincing way. And you can say that to pretty much anyone. But what I've done approaching sessions, a big part of my pre-production is painting a scene. So I need to know exactly where the song takes place. I need to know what the setting looks like. I need to know what the room smells like, where whatever is happening is happening. I get to know every single thing about it. And once I'm in a session with a musician, is where the English skills come in. Once I'm in a session with a musician and we have the song down and it's sounding good and the drum take is pretty close to being the drum take it's supposed to be, I'll say, all right, let's take a minute. Let me tell you where you are. And that's when I bring out the writing materials. And I usually have them memorized. This is part of my method personally. Won't work for everyone, but that's when I bring out the writing materials and I say, okay, so here's where you are. Here's what's going on. Here's what happened right before this performance. Here's what's happening right after this performance. During this section where you play this drum fill, think about an earthquake happening, or an earthquake happens and all of the pans fall off of the shelves. There's a huge clatter. That's the part that you're playing. And usually after doing that, it helps if you dim the lights too. It helps people imagine. But usually after doing that, I get the best take of the session. And it's usually full of mistakes, but it is so believable and it is true and feels like the most in touch with the vision that we are approaching. And that's been really helpful to me. Even having a different major, going into these music sessions, I feel so prepped.
And it's funny when you're mentioning that, it really reminds me of experiences in recording studios of the specific roles that different people play. Because like a sound engineer isn't just somebody with capability to capture sound, but also has to serve as part social worker, part referee.
Right. Yeah, you have to mediate between band members.
Yeah.
Which is hard.
Right.
You're the coach and you're the therapist and you're everything all at once. And you're in charge, and if anything goes wrong, it's all on you. It's high pressure. I love it. It's really fun.
Yeah. Marisa, do you want to talk about words of wisdom for current or future students?
Sure. So things that I'm happy that I did at Trinity was, I'm happy I majored in music. I will say that was probably my most important choice, my most important decision at Trinity. But the experience of coming in as a musical theater vocalist and leaving, knowing that that's not what I wanted to be doing, and that there were so many other things that I could be capable of within music. Nothing wrong with being a musical theater vocalist at all. That's absolutely applaud anyone that goes through that field. But opening myself up to opportunities like Trinity La Mama, which is a theater and dance program, so it's not part of the music major, but crossed over in so many ways, and gave me the opportunity to interact with really significant contemporary classical composers working and creating in New York City right now was really profound, and it really enhanced my experience as a music major at Trinity. The things I regret was not being even more expansive within the music major, like not taking advantage of the music production classes, and not putting even more variety into the major that was already available. I agree with Austin in terms of chapel singers. That was an incredible experience, and it really strengthens your ability to sight read and to solidify your groundwork in music theory in sort of a durational way. I was also involved in a cappella, which was a really great experience. But yeah, it's sort of, I guess my advice, and this is a personal opinion, but my advice to music majors right now would be, you say you're one thing maybe right now, and that's amazing, and you could pursue that, but you are definitely capable of being so many other things too. The community of people that I'm creating with right now. In undergrad, there were only trombone or only bass clarinet or only a vocalist, and now we're all coming together and composing works for each other and creating these multidisciplinary multimedia landscapes that we're all capable of creating. And really that is the direction that art is going right now, especially in New York City, especially in major cities across the country. It's that expectation of the multidisciplinary landscape, at least in contemporary classical music it is. And it's a really beautiful one. And so I think I was slowly starting to get that towards the end of my training career. I composed a musical for my thesis, and instead of singing, well, I did sing a recital too, but my main focus was composing a piece, and that really set me off for the rest of my journey so far. So just don't limit yourself, like there's definitely, you are capable of doing so many other things within this field beyond what you think you are. And that's exciting. And so that's something that I've taken from Trinity, and I'm happy that I have. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Marc, do you want to chime in?
I'll just add that the Inter Arts program coming into Trinity as a freshman seminar that was 3 semesters long really exposed us to a lot of different artsy people in our class. Definitely met a lot of great people who were photographers and actors and dancers, and really getting a chance to sample the potential talent at Trinity really was pretty awesome. So I'd add to that.
Cool. And Austin, before I ask you that, I just wanted to know if you got a Vans endorsement from your video that you did. No, you did just product.
Good question. I'm not monetizing everything I do enough. Yeah, so a few things stick out. Like I just made incredible friends at Trinity, just incredible. So that's key. Another thing was I was exposed to things that were totally new, and they all seem to have value in some bizarre way. So I double majored in music and biology, but one of the funny things that has never left me from the science side of things was how precisely and concisely things must be communicated, just due to the nature of communicating scientific, findings. And so, this is perfect. It's terrible to waste people's time in music. So you want to keep it super fresh all the time, and literally with everything. It's a life lesson that I love, and it's been great for me.
Yeah, that I have to say. So I did my undergrad in percussion performance, and a couple things that I've learned through working as a temp. Like I moved to Boston originally from Colorado to Michigan to Boston, and I realized that even when I was doing, data entry for mailing labels for mailing out magazines and stuff, I would just get these rhythmic things going on, and just basically, I realized that I will still be a drummer, regardless of whether or not I derive an income from that, and that you just find that's what you are and what moves you and keeps you moving from moment to moment and day to day. And kind of another important thing I learned around that time was I went to a music and dance conference, and there was a composer there was talking about the challenges of getting basically having artistic and balancing artistic and economic success. And his suggestion was, he said, I have 2 scales before I take any agreement, like I do any job or any gig. And those scales go from 0 to 100. And there's the money income scale, which is 0 to 100. And then there's the artistic integrity scale, which goes from 0 to 100. And he basically said, when somebody asks me to do something, I'll kind of give each of those scales a number. And if the total combined element is 100 or more, I'll take the gig. And that really helped me, because then you're not taking something and being really bitter about doing this thing that has no artistic integrity, and you're getting no money for it, so it's finding those ways so that you can commit fully to whatever you engage in, and be satisfied one way or another. And so those I would say those are 2 things that I learned after leaving music school and kind of working as a temp, wondering what's my future going to look like, before I went back to school to do ethnomusicology. So, but I'd like to thank all of you for sharing your thoughts and your opinions. We did have a couple parts of questions we didn't get to. I encourage anybody who still has questions, send them to music-alumni@trincol.edu, and we'll try to connect your question with our participants as well. So once again, I'd like to thank you all for sharing our second Music Alumni Showcase, and special thanks to Alex Fishbein, Helder Mira, the Trinity Department of Alumni Relations, Jason Jones, and Nicole Muda-Graves for helping make this all possible. Video of tonight's event will be available on the Austin Arts Center Facebook page, and if you're interested in possibly participating in a future event, or if you want to reach us, again, send an email to music-alumni@trincol.edu. Once again, I'm Eric Galm, Chair of the Music Department. I'd like to thank all of our participants tonight once again, and I look forward to continuing the connections as we move forward. Thank you very much for sharing your time with us, and I'll see you at the next gig. All right, thanks. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Thank you.